Hunger by Knut Hamsun. I've been informed that the first name doesn't have a silent K in it, so Knut. I think the proper Norwegian pronunciation would be like Kjøtt. Wow, I'm gonna butcher this. Kjøtt, I think, but I'm not sure. That would mean this N is silent too, so I'm not entirely sure. But Knut Hamsun is what I'm comfortable with right now, and apologies for if that's blatantly offending you if I'm mispronouncing it, which I am. But yeah, what a book. It is very. I loved it on a personal note. I'm kind of drawn to that kind of darker kind of realm of literature anyway. But I feel I probably read too much of that anyway, so I'm probably, I've been trying to, kind of veer away from some of it, trying to go to like stuff that's like a little bit more upbeat, or whether it's like something like by Voltaire or something like that, like Candide I like to do. And even though that's called optimism, it's like it's actually against it's actually like the total antithesis to optimism, because like Candide's life turns out completely like a different way that he expected it, paying loss, kind of leading him down the wrong path. But anyway, besides the point, yeah, I'd like to get back to, I like to even this out a little bit in the future. So just an FYI, but yeah, Knut Hamsun wrote Hunger in 1890 as he himself was experiencing hunger. And after a kind of disastrous trip, he went to America, and he wasn't successful at the time. He, I think this was his first, maybe sophomore book, I'm not sure, but he was trying to, I guess, find luck in America. I'm gonna have to read more on Mr. Hamsun. But yeah, he lived a long life, pretty long life. Looked good for him. For what it's worth, you're kind of used to hearing about authors like with this kind of like severe, kind of morbid air to them, melancholy, to kind of associate that with like short-lived, whether it be health, in Kafka's case, dying of, it's just like a host of illnesses. I think tuberculosis and all that was rampant at the time, but he lived to be 90 something. I think 94. So yeah, he died like, I believe, I want to say he was born like 1860, I think, and yeah, sometime in the 1850s. I'm not sure. Do the math, but yeah, he wrote Hunger, partially autobiographical, but it's from the point of view of a. Let me just make sure that the audio recording is okay. Cool. Because I know that's gonna cause problems. Just talking this up. So yeah, Hunger. He wrote it from the point of view of an unnamed protagonist whose identity is only given. It's from the first person point of view. This catalog of this man in his decline into hunger too, and it starts in Freetown. I'm sorry, not Freetown. Norway, Oslo, Norway, but in a part of back when Oslo was called Christiania, or Christiania, with a K, I think, or maybe I'm not sure, changed it. That I do kind of know a little bit, because I actually went to Oslo, for only a day, but it was because I was trying to make my way around all the Scandinavian countries and hit them all up, and I was like, yay, let's go to Oslo next, because it's only, when I was in Gothenburg, it was only a couple hours or 2-3 hours from Gothenburg, and from there, again, I'll go down to Denmark, and I went down to Copenhagen too, and when I actually heard that this is set in Freetown, I'm sorry, Christiania, I thought it was talking about Freetown, Christiania in Denmark, which is actually in the Copenhagen, right in the capital city, and I thought that, but then I did some research and I was like, oh, wait, dummy, he's Norwegian, so that wouldn't make any sense. But he did mention kroners and like, not having enough kroners to buy bread for the day. And that was interesting because kroners, what is in Swedish currency. I knew for a fact it was Swedish currency, but I didn't know that's actually Norwegian too. So little factoids I'm just throwing out there. I don't know why. Not really that pertinent to the storyline. Maybe they are in some way. I don't know. I mean, the setting kind of makes the place in a sense, I mean, it could be, Jorge said something along the lines of, like I've loved authors from, Spanish Don Quixote, to people who have, to Japanese authors too, like, I think in an essay. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can have Japanese authors like Murakami, kind of draws from a lot from like Kafka and Dostoevsky and kind of these German writers and as well. It's just interesting because you see this trans kind of intertextual or interculturality, I guess, of things. But anyway, back to the story. So it's about this man who seemed to be kind of young, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, and has leanings towards being a writer, but not necessarily like a writer in the way that Mr. Hamsun. He more so in the sense that he's trying his best to write articles for like a local newspaper area, like little zines or zines or little newsstand kind of articles that, not to say that none of them have artistic merit to them, because he does pour his soul into them, and when the inspiration comes, he's like, I must write. But it's about, this writer, and he's trying to make enough bread for the day, and he's trying to, I guess, like, I don't know if it's like a gig economy with this kind of thing, with he has to go to each little employer, and like he has to until the job and the contract is fulfilled, and then he goes on to the next one, or like a kind of temp agency, or is it like I was still kind of confused about that, which might have been just lost me because I wasn't paying attention as much as I should, but like it was kind of hard to not get lost in that kind of thought of like his hunger kind of informing so much of his actions. Like he's trying, like he's very and it's been this has been compared to like the character of Raskolnikov from Punishment 2, this interior kind of voice that's very stream of conscious and kind of like, well, what if I go this way, what if that's what it's called, I think, an early kind of proto-modernism, I think, which I think that would have been predated the way Virginia Woolf describes modernism as starting in 1910, I believe, by 20 years. So that's pretty wild to think that Hamsun was writing about this at that time. But yeah, it's like he's trying to, there's a code of conduct that he has. It's almost chivalrous. Like he insists that he never that he always gives, a little bit back to other people, like, that are starving in his situation, too. And he's like, well, I did the best I could. I gave this man on the street a good, a few of my kroner to buy, to buy some food for the day, or for a warm blanket. I gave him my best, But then he'll, like, in the next second, he contradicts himself, and he's like, damn it, why did I give him that kroner? I needed that. And it's like, he gets himself in these situations, and he's just like, and this, and he's like, I pawned him my coat, and I did this. And then he ends up going to, writing doesn't really cover a lot of the stuff, because it's like, some of it's dependent on his inspiration, some of it's dependent on the economy, really. It's like the harshness of this kind of economy, and he's like, a lot of it but he never resents anybody for it. He never resents anybody but the great I am. Like, he just, God, or not necessarily like the Judeo-Christian God, but the God of just destiny, of almost in a Roman sense, or a Greco-Roman sense, of being like fate, almost like cursing the fate, like this. He was very kind of remind me of kind of a Greek tragic hero in that sense, where he's just like, do you remember shaking my fist at him for him? Like, he never blames his hunger, the fact that even when he gets down to the point where he sees his rib cage, and the point where he's like eating his own pencils, no joke. There's a part where not only does he find little I think he also tries eating a candle at some point. But he finds little wood chips and stuff, and he's chewing on the wood chips, like kind of masticating it to get its nutrients. And so it's both depressing and kind of absurdly funny at the same time, because he's you wonder if he didn't kind of, if he just acted out of self-interest, would he have this issue? If he just kind of would he, who knows, if he just kind of like, kind of played the opportunist, kind of seize the moment kind of day, like, step on the back of others, he might have been like a honorary dignitary at this time. You don't know, because he's he's clung to this idea, this almost Christian type of charity, of saintliness, of just like, if somebody else needs my thing, God, I'm going to give them that, or But at the same time, he's also he doesn't hide his kind of, I don't want to say disdain, but his kind of bitterness or annoyance, I'd say, like kind of irritation, which is understandable, of course. You're hungry, obviously. He's certain points he's lost himself outside of his apartment, and he lives in a very kind of, again, kind of a Raskolnikov kind of apartment situation in Christiana. And yeah, he's trying his best to kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure out what to do, and he's accidentally, I think he leaves his keys, and then ends up, I think, pawning, or no, using them to bribe somebody to get, I think impersonate somebody, using these keys of somebody else to kind of impersonate a guard, I think, so he can stay in a prison, just so he can have somewhere to stay for the night. So he does end up using some levels of bribery, but it's and then there's but he doesn't mask his annoyance towards certain people. It's like you're getting every aspect of his kind of whole psychological, thing. And he's, if somebody's like, in the beginning of the book, at some point when he's, an old man asks for something, and he's like, why was he still staring at me? It's like, what are you staring at me for? He's quite paranoid about certain things like that. And again, which is understandable, given the circumstances, but he's, there's a lot of that kind of, looking over his shoulder, like, what am I doing? Like, who's looking at me? Why are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me? And it's just all these different people. And it culminates into the end where there's this one woman named Eliana, but that's not her real name, because that's just what he calls her. He's supposed to be kind of, I believe, about middle-aged, so a good deal older than he. And the narrator, he ends up seeing her at first, I think around his apartment complex area, and she's kind of just standing there, and like throughout the day, and is like looking at things and looking at various things, and he's falls for her, and he's like, but he's also very like in denial of it, or like he's like, well, she's staring, like, oh, she's quite beautiful, but like, no, in that kind of upper town, or upper class kind of snobby way of that Norwegian girls and city girls have, or whatever. And he's like, but he ends up, like eventually finally working up the courage to kind of talk to her, but only after he gets like really drunk, and then she's kind of like creeped out. Not creeped out, because she's this comes up later though. He ends up kind of following her home, and he's like, and it turns out that he wasn't drunk, and then he's like, well, and it actually turns out that she kind of ends up returning some of his affections. Like she kisses him briefly, but he's like, completely stultified, and he's kind of like a wild mangy dog. Like you're just like, you don't know what to do with him, and he's like, but she has an interesting kind of eccentric kind of character going on, and there's like you can see like the kind of stark thing that's almost, I thought it was a little bit like it was what was going to happen, that she was like a great deal richer than he. Like he was, she was inviting him in, and like he was going to have a place to stay for the night, but like like it was clear that there was like a stark class division. But what happened is that she actually ended up being quite poor as well, and she was to the point where she had trouble finding food as well. So they're pretty much in the same kind of situation. They're just coming from different places, I suppose. And it just looked on the surface that they were like a lot more distant than they were, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, he ends up like rejecting him after finding out that it's weird, because she rejects him at first, and then she's like, no, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And then it's like, there's quite a bit of a kind of, will she or won't she kind of thing, where it's hard to tell where she's going as a character. Like, does she really is attracted to him? Like, how disgusting does he think he is? Like, is he at this point where he's like so repellent and so unclean, or that even she in her own living arrangements would not be able to kind of accept him, or like you kind of wonder what would happen. He's just like, like, I think it finally ends with like, it's kind of like a weird kind of underground man thing, where he's like, Liza, and he's like attracted, he's like, he purposely makes her feel awful, the underground man, just to kind of get some sense of like an upper thing, where he's like, it's like, and then he ends up just breaking down. That's what I get, just kind of extremely, like a lot of emotions building up, and he's just like doesn't know what to feel, and he just like breaks down. He's just like, like I don't know like what to do. And then I think from then on, like he ends up seeing her in short, brief moments again. But it's kind of an interesting thing going on with the realism of it, because there are parts that are very much naturalistic as well, like Emile Zola, in that school of just seeing things as they are. and not, you know, playing too much around with the surrealism of it, like where people can do anything in surrealism, or, you know, not to negate surrealism or anything like that, but I think it takes away from the fact that there's like of the stark reality that you see going on around you, where John Steinbeck does that as well, or I think Charles Bukowski to an extent. I'd like to read a little bit more of him from just the one book that I had read, but yeah, there's a kind of a tendency to lean away from the material reality of the situation, and in that sense the true gravity of it, and to kind of marginalize it, to truncate it. So, and that's what I think someone like Hamsun is trying not to do, and his character after that kind of rejection, and he's kind of there's points between, which is why I'm struggling with this, because he might be dreaming, he might be it's the kind of ultimate unreliable narrator too, with because he's, like I said, like he's very flawed, contradictory. Like he's like, I want to fulfill this hunger of mine to the point where I am, eating, my own pencil, which is a signification of his own thing, and up until he's actually able to kind of produce some kind of output that actually, his boss actually ends him, much to his surprise, like a 10 kroner note, which is like, his like a good pay, I'm guessing, and he's like fascinated, like, whoa, like, but it's hard to tell, like, exactly, like, moments, is he hallucinating, is he, seeing things, especially with Eliana, like, was she, a figment of his mind? That's what I thought, was like he was just kind of dreaming it all. But and it still might be up in that, maybe I'm ambivalent about it, but what his exact intentions were. But yeah, definitely I'd say more so it veers towards realism. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. Just make sure you maybe even it out. I know other people have different thresholds for like literature that's very depressing and stuff like that, but this does have a bit of humor in it too, if you can take the dry kind of Kafkaesque humor of the situation. But yeah, Hunger, Knut Hamsun. Thanks for watching.